All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do File, Open Folder. And I actually created in my Documents folder a folder called Python here. And I'm going to go ahead and select Folder. Then we're going to do New. We'll create a new file within that, and we'll save this as, make sure we're in our Python. We're going to save this as a Python file. So you can either scroll through all of these till you find Python down here, or you can put it in quotes. And I'm going to go ahead and name mine Play and save over that one. Another thing you might want to do is, if your extensions aren't showing, it might be under these 3 lines, is make sure that you install the Microsoft extension here. And that's going to give you access to some of the code extensions, things like that. If you type Python int here, there's other IntelliSense packs, but you can see right off the bat, they give you a pretty good one here, but there's this extension pack here. All right, so let's take a look at a very simple way. We type in print and we type hello. This is a pretty simple way that we use print statements to test our code. And if you press F5 on your keyboard, you can see it runs our code. And down here we have hello. So I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. Let's take a look at creating a variable. So I'm going to create a variable called name. And I'm going to make that equal to a string, which is Alex. And then I'm going to print the contents of that variable. So inside of here, I'm going to type name. And maybe up here, what we'll do is we'll put a colon in there and a space, and then I'll press F5 again to run this. And you can see we get hello Alex. Well, let's take a look. So this is pretty simple. These are variables. Let's see how we can define a function, or in object-oriented programming, a method. So I'm going to type diff, and we'll go ahead and name this main. You can kind of name it essentially almost anything you want. I'm going to grab and cut these, and I'm actually going to paste them inside. Now these are actually not inside this method. What's located inside this method is anything tabbed in. So this will identify that. Now in order to call main, we want to tab over or backspace over to the furthest left here. And we want to type, we want to call our function this way. So this is defining our function and this is calling. So every part of every function, successful uses you create and then you call the function. So let's press F5 and see if we get a similar result. And you can see that it's still calling hello and Alex. And then if we want to test that again, I'm going to hold, I believe Alt and Shift, and that will duplicate that line. And I'm going to write hello from main. And then I'll press F5 again, and you can see that we get hello from main. So this is how you can create a function, and this is how you can call a function. Now there's also branching, logic, and looping. So with branching, we can use something like an if statement. And we can just say if, and we can use, say we have this name up here as a global variable. So we'll put this above our function here. And actually, let me delete or cut this for a second. Just to show you now, this name here is accessible inside this function because it's outside of it above it, because the way Python works is it's sequential. So if I hit F5 here, you can see that it still found Alex. If I have it inside of here and I decide to do a check, right? So if I say if name is the same as, and I'll add that string, Alex, then we will call our main function. Well, watch this. If I press F5, notice we get an error because it doesn't know what this Alex is or what name is. And the reason is this variable here is local. But if we cut this and we paste it up here, let's kind of kill that space too. Now, because it's a global variable, it's able to be accessed inside this function. So let me go ahead and press F5 here. We shouldn't get any error. And we should get, let's see, go on F5. There we go. It called the function because its name is equal to, this is the same as this text Alex. This variable here is containing the string Alex, and we know that's true because that's up here. So that's one way of doing an if. We can also do else ifs or if else's. So we'll get into branching a little bit more later, but for now, let's take a look at, we've looked at sequences, right? It runs in a sequence. Then we looked at branching. And let's look at the third element of any successful language, and that's looping. So let's go ahead and create a while loop. And what I'm going to say is while, and let's make a variable outside of this called x, and that's equal to, I don't know, 0. And we'll say while x is less than 10, what we're going to do is we're going to print x. And then inside of this print statement, what we'll do is we will increment x. So we'll say x plus plus, or actually we'll do x equals x plus 1. And what should happen here is while this is less than, oops, let me make sure this is smaller. While x is less than 10, we're going to print it all the way leading up to it, right? So let's go ahead and hit F5 to run this and see what happens. And you can see we get all the way up to 9 because 9 is less than 10. Can expand this a little bit more. All right, let's take a look at another loop here. So, all right, so I'm going to actually highlight this and then right click and let's see, I want to comment this out. Another way of doing it is if you hold Control and you hit the / key, that's to the left of the Shift key, you can comment that way. Let's take a look at another thing. So we're going to look at a for loop. So we're going to do for x, which is this 0 here, in the range, right? And what we're looking at is in the range, and then we give it a specific range, right? So we're saying between 5 and 10. And then what I'm going to do is just print x. So let me copy this here. And let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. And you can see here that it starts at 0 and then it goes all the way down. Let's kind of move this up a little bit. And let's save this too. Let's run that again just so you can see that. And you can see that we're getting a range in values here from 5 to 10. So you can see here it starts at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes all the way to 9. All right, so for loops are a little bit different inside of Python. So you can see here they're considered iterators. So we're actually using x to iterate or store the values from 5 to 10. So you can see we're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 is not between those two values. So that's why we only get from 5 to 9 here.